Close your eyes for just a moment and imagine that everything you believe about yourself, every fear, every label, every worry, simply dissolves into silence. What if I told you that the voice in your head is not who you are, and that beyond it lies a peace so vast it feels like coming home for the very first time? Now listen carefully, because this is not just a meditation, this is a remembering. There is a peculiar habit of the human mind, a constant chatter that narrates your life as if it was separate from you. It tells you who you are, what you should fear, what you must become. And yet, have you ever noticed that this voice never truly rests? Even in moments of joy, it whispers, "This won't last." In moments of silence, it rushes to fill the void. But what if that voice is not your master, but merely an echo? You see, most people go through life believing they are the thinker of their thoughts, when in truth, they are the space in which thoughts appear, like clouds drifting across an endless sky. Your worries, your doubts, your regrets, they come, they change, and they pass. But the sky, the vast awareness that you are, remains untouched. And somewhere deep within that awareness, there is a quiet presence, a divine stillness that has always been there, waiting patiently for you to notice. Perhaps you felt it before in those rare moments when time seemed to stop. Maybe it was while watching the sunset, or hearing a piece of music that stirred something unexplainable in your soul. For a brief second, there were no problems, no past, no future, just a pure sense of being. That is your true nature. But life, with all its noise and demands, pulls you away from that stillness. You are taught to chase, to strive, to become. You are told that peace lies somewhere ahead, in success, in approval, in control. Yet the more you chase, the further it seems to slip away. And here is the great paradox. The very thing you are searching for is the one thing you cannot chase, because it is already within you. Take a slow breath in and let it out gently. Notice how the breath comes and goes on its own, without effort, without force. You are not commanding it, you are witnessing it. Life itself is happening through you in the same way. Your heart beats, your lungs breathe, your body lives, all without your conscious control. And yet, the mind insists, "I am in charge." This illusion of control, this constant need to hold everything together, is what creates tension, fear, and suffering. Because the truth is, life was never meant to be controlled. It was meant to be experienced. Imagine holding water in your hands. If you grip too tightly, it slips through your fingers. But if you relax, if you allow, it rests gently in your palms. Your life, your peace, your connection to the divine works in the same way. There is a quiet wisdom in letting go, not giving up, but releasing the illusion that you must force everything to happen. Trust is not weakness. It is a deep understanding that there is a greater flow, a divine order, guiding every moment of your existence. And yes, there will be times when life feels uncertain, when the path ahead is unclear, when fear creeps in and whispers, "What if things fall apart?" But what if, instead of falling apart, things are actually falling into place? Consider the moments in your life that once felt like endings, disappointments, losses, changes you didn't want. At the time, they may have felt painful, even unbearable. But looking back, can you see how they shaped you, how they redirected you, how they quietly guided you towards something you could not yet understand? There is a verse that echoes this truth, that even in what we cannot comprehend, There is a plan unfolding, a wisdom beyond our limited view. You are not walking alone, even when it feels like it. There is a presence, a gentle guiding force that sees the whole picture, even when you only see fragments. So in this moment, you are invited to pause, to soften, to step out of the endless thinking, and simply be. Feel the weight of your body, supported by the ground beneath you, as if the earth itself is holding you, reminding you that you belong here, that you are safe in this moment. Listen, not just with your ears, but with your whole being. Beneath the noise of the world, beneath the chatter of the mind, there is a silence, alive and full, not empty, but deeply present. That silence is where peace lives. And the more you rest in it, the more you begin to realize that you were never separate from it. You are not a stranger searching for home. You are home itself, temporarily distracted by thoughts. Let the thoughts come, and let them go like leaves floating down a river. You do not need to chase them, or fight them, or make sense of them. Just watch gently, patiently, as they pass. And in between those thoughts, notice the gaps, the stillness, the quiet presence that remains. That presence is not something you create. It is something you uncover, something that has always been there. Waiting beneath the surface of your awareness, this is where faith begins, not as blind belief, but as a direct experience, a knowing that there is something greater than the mind, something deeper than the mind, something deeper than fear, something unshakable within you. And as you begin to trust this, even just a little, life starts to feel different. The need to control softens, the fear of the unknown loosens its grip, and in its place, a quiet confidence emerges. Not because you have all the answers, but because you no longer need them. You begin to understand that you are being carried, moment by moment, breath by something far wiser than your thoughts could ever comprehend. So stay here, in this awareness, just a little longer. Let the silence speak to you. Let it remind you that you are not lost, you are not broken, and you are certainly not alone. Everything you are searching for is already within you, waiting for you to be still enough to notice. And as this part comes to a gentle close, carry this with you. A simple, quiet truth that even in uncertainty, even in the unseen, there is a divine plan unfolding, one that is guiding you exactly where you need to be. Trust it, be patient with it, and most importantly, be gentle with yourself. And so, without breaking the stillness we have entered, allow yourself to drift even deeper, as though you are gently sinking beneath the surface of a quiet ocean where the noise of the world cannot reach you, where even your own thoughts begin to lose their urgency. There is something curious that begins to happen when you stop trying to fix yourself, when you stop chasing clarity, when you simply sit in the presence of what is. At first, the mind resists, it fidgets, it searches, it tries to pull you back into its familiar patterns. It may whisper things like, "This is pointless," or "You should be doing something more important." But notice, these are just more thoughts, arising and passing. Like everything else, you do not need to argue with them. You do not need to silence them, because even the noise exists within the same peaceful awareness. Imagine a storm in the sky, dark clouds, heavy rain, thunder rolling in the distance. To someone's stars, nothing beneath it, it feels overwhelming, chaotic, even frightening. But above those clouds, the sky remains clear, untouched, infinite. You are that sky. Your worries, your fears, your restless thoughts, they are the passing storm. And no storm, no matter how intense, can ever damage the sky itself. Now think of a moment in your life when you felt completely overwhelmed. Perhaps it was a time when everything seemed uncertain, when you felt lost, unsure of who you were or where you were going. In that moment, it may have felt like the storm would never end. But here you are, still breathing, still present, still moving forward in ways you may not even fully understand. The storm passed, as they always do. And yet, something within you remains steady, even if you didn't recognize it at the time. That steady presence is not something you created. It is something that has always been there, quietly holding you together, even in your most fragile moments. There is a profound humility in realizing this, in understanding that you are not solely responsible for carrying the weight of your existence. Life, in its mysterious intelligence, is unfolding through you, not because you have everything figured out, but because you are part of something far greater than the mind can comprehend. And this is where surrender begins, not as defeat, but as liberation. Surrender is not about giving up your dreams or abandoning your path. It is about releasing the illusion that you must force every outcome, that you must control every detail, that you must always know what comes next. Because the truth is, some of the most beautiful moments in your life were never planned. Think about it. The unexpected conversations, the chance encounters, the opportunities that appeared when you least expected them. There is a quiet orchestration at play, something that weaves moments together, are in ways we cannot predict, and perhaps, just perhaps, what you call uncertainty is not something to fear, but something sacred. Because it is within uncertainty that possibility lives. There is a passage often reflected upon in moments of doubt, a reminder that even when you cannot see the full path, you are being guided step by step. Not all at once, not in ways that always make sense, but with a precision that unfolds exactly when it is needed. So instead of asking, why is this happening to me? Now, is this happening to me? Try gently asking, what is this teaching me? Not from a place of pressure, but from curiosity, from openness, from a willingness to trust that there is meaning, even in the moments that feel unclear. And as you sit here now, breathing slowly, feeling the quiet rhythm of your body, notice how life continues without your effort. Your heart beats, your breath flows, your awareness remains. This is not something you have to earn, or prove, or achieve. It is a gift. A sacred, continuous gift given to you moment by moment. And yet, so often we overlook it because we are too busy chasing something else, something more, something better. But what if nothing is missing? What if this moment, exactly as it is, holds everything you need? Not everything you want, perhaps, but everything you need to be present, to be alive, to be connected to something deeper than the surface of your thoughts. Feel into that for a moment, not with your mind, but with your awareness. There is a softness here. What not a quiet completeness that does not depend on circumstances. It does not depend on circumstances. It does not demand that life be perfect. It does not require that everything go your way. It simply is. And the more you allow yourself to rest in this, the more you begin to see that peace is not something you must chase in the future. It is something you can return to right now, in this very breath. Even in difficult times, even when things feel uncertain, this space remains available to you. It does not disappear when life becomes challenging. It only becomes hidden beneath layers of thought, beneath the stories we tell ourselves about what should or should not be happening. But the moment you pause, The moment you become still, it reveals itself again quietly, patiently, as if it had been waiting for you all along. And perhaps that is the greatest act of faith, not believing that everything will go exactly as you planned, but trusting that no matter what happens, you will be held, guided, and carried through it. There is a deep comfort in this, a reassurance that you do not have to have all the answers, that you do not have to figure everything out right now. You are allowed to be in process, to grow slowly, to learn as you go. Just as the seed does not rush to become a tree, it simply unfolds in its own time, nourished by forces it cannot see. You are unfolding too. Even in moments when you feel stuck, even when it seems like nothing is changing, there is movement happening beneath the surface, quiet transformations, subtle shifts guiding you forward in ways you may only understand later. So be patient with yourself. Be gentle with your journey, and trust that what is meant for you will find its way to you, not through force, but through alignment, through presence, through a quiet openness to life as it is. As this part gently comes to a close, let this truth settle into your heart. Like a calm whisper carried on the wind, you do not need to rush, you do not need to control, you do not need to control, you do not need to have it all figured out. All you need is to be here, to trust, and to allow life to unfold one moment at a time. And now, as we continue this gentle unfolding, notice how something within you has already begun to soften, as though the tight grip you once held on your thoughts, your worries, your need to understand everything is slowly loosening, giving way to something quieter, something deeper. There is a subtle shift that happens when you begin to trust the present moment, not because it is always easy, but because you begin to see that resisting it only creates more tension. And in that tension, the mind builds stories about what should have been, what might happen, what could go wrong. But stories, no matter how convincing, are not reality. Reality is this moment. And in this moment, if you truly look, there is far less to fear than the mind would have you believe. You may still feel uncertainty, you may still carry questions, but beneath all of that, there is a quiet steadiness, like the slow, steady rhythm of the ocean beneath the surface waves. Have you ever stood by the sea, watching the waves rise and fall? On the surface, there is constant motion, endless activity, but beneath it, in the deeper waters, there is a profound stillness. This is the nature of your being. On the surface, thoughts move rapidly, emotions rise and fall, experiences come and go. But beneath all of that, there is a depth within you, untouched, unshaken, eternally present. And the more you bring your awareness to that depth, the less power the surface turbulence has over you. It does not mean life becomes free of challenges. It means you are no longer lost within them. There is a story, simple yet profound, of a man who spent his entire life searching for treasure. He traveled across lands, climbed mountains, crossed oceans, always believing that somewhere there was something that would finally make him feel complete. Years passed, and he grew tired, worn by the endless search, and one day, with nothing left to chase, he returned home, sat quietly, and for the first time, truly rested. And in that stillness, he realized something that had been hidden in plain sight. The treasure he had been seeking was never out there. It was the peace he felt in simply being. How often do we do the same? We chase fulfillment through achievements, through validations, through trying to become someone we think we should be. And yet, Even when we reach those milestones, the satisfaction is often fleeting, quickly replaced by the next desire, the next goal. It is not that goals are wrong or that growth is unnecessary, but when your sense of worth, your sense of peace, depends entirely on something outside of you, you become trapped in a cycle that never truly ends, because there will always be something more. But peace, real peace, is not found at the end of that cycle. It is found when you step out of it, even for a moment, and return to yourself. There is a quiet teaching that echoes across many spiritual paths, a reminder that the divine presence you seek is closer than your own breath, not distant, not separate, but intimately woven into the fabric of your existence. And perhaps that is why, when you become still, when you quiet the mind, when you allow yourself to simply be, there is a sense of connection that arises, something sacred, something beyond words. You may not be able to explain it, but you can feel it. A warmth, a calm, a subtle knowing that you are not alone, that you never have been. And in that knowing, fear begins to dissolve. Not because life suddenly becomes predictable, but because you begin to trust that whatever comes, you will meet it with a presence that is deeper than fear itself. Think of a time when you faced something difficult, something you thought you could not handle. In that moment, you may have doubted yourself, questioned your strength, felt overwhelmed by uncertainty. But somehow, you made it through, not because you had all the answers, but something within you rose to meet the moment. It is you, beyond the limitations of the mind, and the more you connect with this deeper part of yourself, the less you rely on external certainty, the less you feel the need to control every outcome. You begin to move through life with a quiet confidence, not loud or forceful, but steady, grounded, rooted in trust. Trust in the process, trust in the unseen guidance that shapes your path. There is a kind of freedom in this, a release from the constant pressure to figure everything out. Because the truth is, life was never meant to be solved like a problem. It is meant to be lived, experienced, felt moment by moment. And yes, there will be times when you feel lost again, when the mind pulls you back into worry, when old patterns resurface. This is part of being human. But now, you know something you may not have known before. You know that you can return to your breath, return to stillness, return to the quiet awareness that exists beneath the noise. This is always available to you. Always. No matter where you are. No matter what you're going through, no matter how far you feel from peace, you are only ever one moment of awareness away from it. Let that sink in. You are not as far away as you think. Even now, as you sit here, listening, breathing, there is a gentle presence within you, steady, patient, unchanged by the passing thoughts. Rest in that presence, allowed to hold you, allowed to remind you that you are more than your fears, more than your doubts, more than the stories you have been telling yourself. You are something far greater, something deeply connected to the divine flow of life itself. And as this part begins to fade into stillness, carry this quiet realization with you that you do not need to search endlessly for peace, because peace has never left you. It has been waiting quietly within you all along. Trust that. Return to it often and let it guide you gently, patiently, toward the life you are meant to live. And now, As we move even deeper into this quiet awareness, there is a sense that something within you is no longer resisting, no longer grasping, but simply allowing, as if you have stepped out of the current and are now floating gently with the flow of life itself. There is a profound beauty in this state, one that cannot be forced, only discovered. It is the realization that life is not happening to you, but through you. As you, every breath, every sensation, every moment of awareness is part of a greater unfolding, something infinitely intelligent, infinitely patient. And when you begin to see this, truly see it, something shifts forever. The need to fight reality begins to fade, because what you once called obstacles begin to look more like invitations. Invitations to slow down, to listen, to trust more deeply than you ever have before. There is a quiet truth that many spend their entire lives overlooking, and it is this: that peace does not come from controlling life, but from being in harmony with it. Think of a river. It does not struggle to reach the ocean. It does not question every turn, every bend, every obstacle in its path. It flows naturally, effortlessly, guided by something unseen yet undeniable. And you are not separate from that same flow. But the mind, so accustomed to control, resists this idea. It says, if I let go, everything will fall apart. It clings to plans, to expectations, to the illusion that certainty equals safety. Yet how often has life shown you otherwise? How often have the things you feared never come to pass, while the things you never expected changed your life completely? There is a divine mystery at work, something beyond logic, beyond prediction. And it does not ask you to understand it fully, only to trust it, to walk with it, to allow it to guide you, one step at a time. And yes, that requires courage. And yes, that requires courage. Not the loud kind of courage, but the quiet kind, the kind that says, I don't know what comes next, but I'm willing to trust anyway. That kind of courage is born not from certainty, but from faith. Faith that even in the unknown, there is a path. Faith that even in the silence, there is guidance. Faith that even in the moments when you feel most alone, you are being held by something, NG, far greater than you can see. There is a gentle reminder found in many sacred teachings that when you release your tight grip on life, you begin to receive what was always meant for you. Not always what you expected, but often something deeper, something more aligned with who you truly are. And perhaps this is what you are being invited into now. Not a life without challenges, but a life where you no longer see challenges as enemies, but as part of the unfolding, part of the shaping, part of the quiet transformation happening within you. Because you are changing, even now, not in some dramatic, visible way, but in the subtle shifts, the softening of resistance, the growing sense of trust, the quiet recognition that you are not who you thought you were. You are not just the voice in your head, not just the roles you play, not just the story you've been telling yourself. You are the awareness behind it all, the stillness beneath the noise, the presence that remains no matter what comes or goes. And the more you rest in this truth, the more life begins to feel lighter. Not because everything becomes easy, but because you are no longer carrying it all alone. There is a surrender here, a sacred letting go, where you begin to say, I trust that what is meant for me will not miss me. Feel that for a moment. Let those words settle gently within you. I trust that what is meant for me will not miss me. There is peace in that, a deep, steady peace that does not depend on outcomes, but on trust. And from that trust, something beautiful begins to grow, a sense of alignment, where your actions feel more natural, your decisions less forced, your path less confusing. Not because you suddenly know everything, but because you are listening more deeply, not just to your thoughts, but to that quiet inner knowing, that gentle guidance that has always been there. And when you follow that, even in small ways, life begins to open in ways you cannot predict. Doors appear, connections form, opportunities arise, not always in the way you imagined, but in the way you need. This is the flow. This is the quiet dance between you and the divine. Not separate, but deeply intertwined. And as you continue on this path, there will be moments when you forget, moments when fear returns, when doubt creeps in, when the mind begins its old patterns once again. And that is okay, because now you know how to return. Return to your breath, return to the present moment, return to the awareness that is always here, waiting patiently for you to notice it again. This is your anchor, this is your home. And no matter how far you wander, you can always come back, always. So as this final part gently comes to rest, let yourself sink fully into this stillness, this presence, this quiet trust that is now growing within you. Let it hold you, let it guide you, let it remind you that you are not separate from the peace you seek. You are one with it. And carry this with you into every moment that follows, a gentle knowing that you are exactly where you need to be on a path that is unfolding perfectly, even if you cannot yet see the whole of it. Trust the process, trust the timing, and most importantly, trust yourself as a part of this greater divine flow. Then allow everything you have just experienced, every quiet realization, every soft release, every moment of stillness, to gently gather within your heart as if all these parts were never separate, but simply different doorways leading you back to the same sacred place. Because in truth, there was never a journey outward. It only felt that way. You thought you were searching, striving, trying to become something more, trying to fix what felt broken, trying to find peace. See somewhere beyond your reach, but now, in this quiet awareness, you begin to see it differently. You were never incomplete. You were never truly lost. You were only distracted. Distracted by the noise, by the endless movement of the mind, by the illusion that who you are is defined by your thoughts, your fears, your past, your expectations of the future. But beneath all of that, there has always been something untouched, something whole, something deeply, divinely at peace. And now you have felt it. Even if just for a moment, you have touched that stillness, that quiet presence that does not come and go, that does not depend on circumstances, that does not need to be earned. And that changes everything. Because once you know it exists, once you recognize it within yourself, you can never fully believe the illusion again. The fear may return, yes. The doubt may whisper again, yes. The doubt may whisper again, yes. But somewhere within you there will always be a gentle knowing. There will always be a gentle knowing, a quiet voice beneath the noise reminding you, this is not all that I am. And that knowing is your light. It is what will guide you. In moments of confusion, in moments of pain, in moments when the path ahead feels unclear, you will remember, perhaps not immediately, but eventually, to pause, to breathe, to return, to come back, not to a place, but to a presence. And in that return, you will find your strength again. Not the kind of strength that fights, or forces, or resists. The kind that stands gently, yet unshaken, in the face of whatever life brings. Because you begin to understand that life is not something you must conquer. It is something you are a part of, something you move with, something that carries you, just as much as you walk within it. And there is a deep, sacred comfort in that. To know that you do not have to have all the answers. To know that you do not have to control every outcome. To know that even in your uncertainty, even in your not knowing, there is a wisdom at work, guiding you, shaping you, holding you. A wisdom that sees beyond what you can see, a presence that understands what you cannot yet understand. Some call it faith, some call it surrender. Some simply feel it as a quiet trust in the unfolding of life. And whatever name you give it, it is here, now, within you. So as you move forward from this moment, into your life, into your days and nights, into your challenges and your joys, carry this awareness with you, not as something heavy, not as something you must hold on to tightly, but as something light, something natural, something that is already a part of you. Return to your breath. When the world feels overwhelming, return to stillness. When the mind becomes loud, return to trust. When fear begins to rise, and remind yourself gently, patiently, I am not the storm. I am the sky. Let that truth settle deep within you. Let it anchor you. Let it free you. And now, in this quiet closing moment, if you are willing, just allow yourself to receive this simple, heartfelt prayer. May you find peace, not in the absence of challenges, but in the presence of trust. May you walk through uncertainty, not with fear, but with quiet faith, knowing you are guided. May you remember again and again that you are never alone. Again and again that you are never alone, even in your silence, and may you come to see with gentle clarity that everything you have been searching for has always been within you. Rest in that, trust in that. And when you are ready, carry this peace with you into the world, one breath, one moment, one step at a time. There is an old saying that the truth will set you free, but before it frees you, it makes you heavy. The truthful man, wherever you find him, seems to walk under a weight invisible to others. He may not complain, he may not cry out, but there is a gravity in his presence, a solemnity in his eyes, as though he carries something no one else can quite understand. And indeed, he does. For the truthful man carries the heaviest burden of all, the refusal to live in illusion. Most people find it easier to live with masks. We present faces to one another, polished, rehearsed, agreeable. A father plays the role of the strong provider, even when he trembles inside. A friend nods along to things he does not believe, only to avoid the awkward silence of disagreement. A lover says, I will always be here, even while knowing deep down that nothing lasts forever.
These masks are lies, of course, but they are lies we accept because they protect us from discomfort. They let us belong, they let us be liked, but the truthful man cannot wear them for long. He may try, for he is human after all, but something in him revolts. He feels the itch of dishonesty like a splinter in the mind. He senses the falseness of the role and cannot rest until it is removed. And so, one by one, he lays aside the masks. At first, this feels noble, liberating. He thinks, now I can finally be real. But he soon discovers that the world does not reward reality. The world punishes it. Imagine a dinner table where everyone is speaking politely about things they do not care about: politics, the weather, the price of bread. And into that circle steps the truthful man. He cannot force his tongue to move along with their games. He does not condemn them. He simply falls silent. But his silence exposes the emptiness of the conversation, and suddenly the others are uneasy. His presence becomes a mirror they would rather avoid. This is why the truthful man carries a burden, not because truth itself is a curse, but because it alienates him from the crowd. The world is built upon a delicate agreement. We will not disturb each other's illusions. And the truthful man, by his very nature, breaks that pact. He carries the heaviest burden because he cannot lie to himself. He cannot convince himself that wealth is happiness when he sees rich men weeping in their mansions. He cannot pretend that success is security when he knows that every victory ends in death. He cannot swallow the belief that belonging is found in imitation when his soul cries out that imitation is the death of individuality. Others can, others do. They dance to the music of the marketplace. They march to the rhythm of society's drum. They drown themselves in noise to avoid hearing the silence of truth. But the truthful man cannot. His ears are tuned to a deeper sound. And once you hear that sound, you cannot unhear it. Now, you may think, surely this man is free, for he sees what others cannot. And yes, there is freedom in truth. But freedom is not always light. Sometimes freedom is heavier than chains. Think of a prisoner released after many years. He steps into the open air, and for a moment he rejoices, but soon he trembles. For freedom requires choices, responsibility, risk. He cannot hide behind the walls any longer. He must stand on his own. So it is with truth. The liar hides behind illusion. The truthful man stands naked before reality. And reality is vast, uncertain, often merciless. This is why truth is not celebrated by the many. They prefer the comfortable shelter of lies. It is why prophets are stoned, why philosophers are ridiculed, why the honest man is mocked as naive or dangerous. His refusal to join the masquerade unsettles the dancers. And so, his freedom becomes his weight. The truthful man carries another burden too, the burden of clarity. To see things as they are means to also see the suffering that others ignore. When a man numbs himself with distractions, he can walk past the beggar in the street without a second thought. When he tells himself, "It's not my problem," he feels no sting of conscience. But the truthful man cannot turn away so easily. He sees the hunger in the beggar's eyes as if it were his own. He feels the trembling of the earth under the weight of human greed. He senses the loneliness hidden behind laughter, the despair tucked behind smiles, and all of it presses upon him. This is not to say he wallows in misery, no, but he is awake to pain. And awakening to pain means carrying it, even when it is not yours. It is like standing on a mountain where you see the whole valley. Beautiful, yes, but also terrible. You see not only the flowers, but also the graves, not only the rivers, but also the blood that stains them. To see clearly is both a gift and a wound. And so the truthful man appears heavier than others. He is not entertained by empty distractions, for he sees through them. He is not intoxicated by shallow praise, for he knows how quickly it fades. He is not comforted by hollow promises, for he knows they cannot be kept. Instead, he carries the silence of honesty, the loneliness of authenticity, the sorrow of seeing through illusions. Others dance lightly because they believe the dance is real. The truthful man walks heavily because he knows it is only a play. And when the play no longer convinces you, even laughter becomes heavy in your mouth. But here lies the paradox. The burden of truth, though heavy, is the only burden worth carrying. For what do the others carry? They carry the burden of lies, though they do not admit it. They must remember their falsehoods, repair their broken disguises, run from their own reflections. Their burden is confusion. The truthful man's burden is clarity. And though clarity weighs him down, it also steadies him. He may stumble under its heaviness, but he does not fall into the abyss of delusion. He may feel alone, but he is not lost. He may feel heavy, but he is real. And reality, though harsh, is the only ground upon which a man can truly stand. So the truthful man carries the heaviest burden, not because life is cruel, not because he is cursed, but because he refuses the cheap comfort of illusion. He would rather suffer under the weight of truth than rest lightly upon the pillow of lies. And perhaps this is the greatest paradox of all. Though he seems burdened, though he seems lonely, though he seems weary, the truthful man, in his heaviness, is more free than the light-footed dancers of illusion. For when the dance ends, when the music fades, when the masks fall away, it is only the truthful man who will still be standing, burdened but unbroken, heavy but whole. To live truthfully is to walk without armor, and that is why the truthful man appears fragile, even weak. While others surround themselves with shields of pretense, I am strong, I am in control, I am important, he steps forward bare, unwilling to clothe himself in what he knows to be false. At first glance, this seems foolish. How can a man without armor survive in a world that worships appearances? How can the unprotected endure in a society that mistakes masks for strength? Yet here is the paradox. His lack of armor is precisely his strength. For what happens when the storm comes? What happens when the illusions crack? The man who wears false armor is shattered along with it. The truthful man, having never depended on illusions, stands firm. The burden of truth is heavy because it does not allow shortcuts. The liar can flatter to be liked, boast to be admired, pretend to be wise. He can win friends with deceit, gain power with manipulation, and soothe his conscience with distraction. The truthful man has none of these luxuries. He must take the long road, the slow road, the honest road. He must earn respect, not demand it. He must accept solitude when his honesty unsettles others. He must face consequences when his refusal to lie exposes what others would prefer to hide. This is why his steps are heavy. Every footfall is weighed with reality. And yet, this heaviness is not defeat, it is integrity. The truthful man walks with burden, yes, but each burden carried honestly strengthens his soul. To carry truth is also to carry solitude. You see, lies create crowds. They give us slogans to chant together, masks to wear together, illusions to share. Whole societies are built upon mutually agreed pretenses. And within them, people feel united, not because they are truly connected, but because they are collectively deceived. But the truthful man cannot join this unity. He cannot nod along when his heart says no. He cannot pretend to belong when he knows the price of belonging is the death of his authenticity. And so he walks apart. He becomes the man at the edge of the room, the one whose silence disturbs the noise, the one who no longer laughs at empty jokes. He feels the sting of being misunderstood, the ache of being excluded, the chill of being alone. This is his burden. But it is also his refinement. For solitude, when embraced truthfully, is not emptiness but fullness. The man who is left alone with his honesty begins to hear what the crowd cannot. He hears the song of the wind, the wisdom of silence, the quiet companionship of the stars. In losing the applause of the many, he gains the intimacy of the real. The truthful man carries the heaviest burden because he is called to suffer without escape. The liar suffers too, of course, but he hides his suffering beneath distractions. He runs into the arms of entertainment, drowns himself in noise, loses himself in ambition. He refuses to look at his pain directly, and so he carries it in secret, disguised even from himself. But the truthful man has no such escape. He feels pain and admits it. He faces fear and names it. He confronts despair without the drug of denial. And so his suffering is heavier but also cleaner. Like a fire that burns hot and pure, his suffering refines him. It teaches him what matters. It strips away what is unnecessary. It forges in him a strength that cannot be faked, for it is carved directly from the stone of reality. This is why the truthful man, though heavy, is free. The liar may laugh loudly, but inside he trembles. The crowd may cheer together, but each member fears solitude. The pretender may shine for a season, but he is always running from the shadow he casts. The truthful man, however, has nothing to fear. His life may be heavy, but it is steady. His road may be lonely, but it is real. His heart may ache, but it is whole. And this wholeness, this integrity, gives him a strength that no applause, no praise, no illusion can provide. The burden of truth also transforms the way he sees others. At first, honesty isolates him, but in time, he discovers that his burden is not only his own. Everyone, in their quiet moments, senses the weight of reality. Everyone knows, somewhere deep inside, that their masks are fragile, that their illusions will one day fail. The truthful man becomes a kind of silent witness to this hidden awareness in others. He no longer despises them for their lies. He understands. He sees that their dishonesty is not cruelty, but fear. They fear what he has already accepted, the raw, unpolished face of reality. And so his burden, though heavy, ripens into compassion. He does not join their illusions, but neither does he condemn them. He carries his truth with dignity, and in doing so, he becomes a light for those who are ready to step into honesty themselves. The heaviest burden becomes the deepest gift. For in the end, what the truthful man carries is not merely his own honesty, but the possibility of honesty for everyone. By refusing to bow to illusion, he shows that it can be done. By bearing the cost of authenticity, he proves that the cost is survivable. By walking alone, he clears a path that others may one day follow, and though he may never be thanked, though his road may never be crowded, he leaves behind a trail of footprints that point toward reality. So yes, the truthful man carries the heaviest burden, but it is a burden worth carrying, for while it bends his back, it straightens his spirit. While it isolates him from the crowd, it connects him to the cosmos. While it removes his illusions, it reveals the eternal presence behind them. And when all the masks fall away, when all the pretenses collapse, when all the illusions dissolve, it will not be the liar who stands free. It will be the man who carried the burden of truth all along. You see, everyone, everywhere, is looking for the secret of happiness, the secret of success, the secret of love, and of course, the secret of life itself. And the marvelous joke, the one hiding in plain sight, is that the secret is so simple, you overlook it. It's so close, you can't see it. So ordinary, you call it unimportant. The secret of life is simply to be alive. That's it. That's the punchline. But when I say that, people often look disappointed. They frown. as if I've handed them an empty box. They say, that can't be right. Surely there's more. And that thought, you see, is exactly the trick. That thought is what keeps you running in circles, chasing shadows, always preparing to live later but never quite living now. Imagine a dog chasing its tail. Round and round it goes, convinced that just a little more effort will catch it. And of course, the faster it goes, the more elusive the tail becomes. This is what the human mind does when it searches for the meaning of life. It chases what it already has. And in chasing, it misses it. Being alive is not a goal. It is not a prize you win at the end of some long journey. It is what's happening right now, in this very breath, in this very moment. But we don't quite believe that. We've been taught that life is always around the corner, that we must improve, refine, perfect ourselves before we can truly live. And so we spend our days rehearsing for a performance that never comes. We treat the present moment as practice, as preparation, as a stepping stone always for something else later on. But this is it. The rehearsal is the show. The journey is the destination. And the more you try to pin life down, to demand it be more, demand it reveal itself like a secret scroll, the more it slips through your fingers, like water grasped in a clenched fist. Think about music for a moment. The point of a song is not to get to the end of it. If that were the case, the greatest musicians would be the fastest racing through Beethoven or Bach to arrive at the final note. But that's absurd. We don't listen to music for the ending. We listen for the unfolding, for the play of sound in time. And life is no different. The point of life is not to reach the finish line. The point is to dance while the music is playing, to sway with the rhythm, to laugh at the melody, to feel the vibrations in your bones. And yet most people are running through life like it's a race, desperate to get somewhere, anywhere other than where they are. Now, part of the difficulty comes from the ego, because the ego is built on becoming. The ego survives by always imagining that the next step is where fulfillment lies. It whispers, you're not quite there yet. Just a little more money, a little more knowledge, a little more meditation, a little more time, then you'll arrive. And so you live in a perpetual state of almost happy, almost peaceful, almost free. But the truth is that what you are seeking is what you already are. The ego hates that truth. It resists it. Because if you stop chasing, the ego loses its game. It thrives only in striving, in comparison, in the endless ladder climbing of becoming someone. To simply be well, that's the end of the ego. And so it distracts you with future promises and past regrets, keeping you from the simplicity of the present. This is why I often say life is a game of hide and seek. The universe hides from itself by pretending to be you. And then, through little glimpses, through moments of laughter or wonder, it finds itself again. And when you see this, truly see it, you can't help but laugh. Because you realize you've been searching for something you could never lose. You've been trying to become what you already are. The seeker was the sought. The player was the game. The question was the answer. And then all the heaviness, the seriousness of the search falls away. Life is revealed not as a problem to be solved, but as a song to be sung, a dance to be danced, a mystery to be enjoyed rather than explained. So then, what does it mean to be alive? It means to feel this breath, to hear the hum of existence right now. It means to taste your food when you eat it, instead of thinking about tomorrow's menu. It means to walk without rushing to arrive, to speak without rehearsing what comes next, to look without searching for meaning. To be alive is not an achievement. It is awareness itself. It is this. But most of us are so busy chasing that we forget to notice. We live as though life were elsewhere, always waiting for us, just beyond the horizon. But tomorrow never comes. There is only ever this eternal now. So what do? You stop grasping. You stop clutching. Life cannot be held like property. It can only be received like a gift. When you open your hand, the water rests gently in your palm. When you open your heart, life reveals itself without effort. You don't have to force it. You don't have to deserve it. You simply have to notice it. And when you do, you see the secret was never hidden at all. Alive, always alive. Even when we forget, even when we chase, even when we doubt, life does not withhold itself. It is what you are. And the moment you recognize that, the search ends. And in ending, a new kind of play begins. So, laugh, dance, sing, because the secret of life is not in the future. It is not in some great beyond. It is here, it is now, it is you. Now, when you begin to see that the secret of life is simply to be alive, something curious happens. You suddenly notice that much of what you were worried about, much of what you were striving for, was rather unnecessary. It was like carrying heavy luggage on a trip when all along you could have walked freely without it. And one of the heaviest bags we carry is the fear of change. You see, we cling to life as though it were a possession. We say, this is my body, my mind, my story, my future. And because we claim it, we fear losing it. But what if being alive is not something you own? What if it's something the universe is doing? Just as a wave is something the ocean is doing, you are something the cosmos is doing. You are not separate from it. You are an event of the whole. And once you see that, change is no longer so terrifying. Because death, then, is not the end of you, as though life was switched off like a lamp. It is simply the wave returning to the sea. We've been tricked into believing that life is a contest we must win, a puzzle we must solve, or a possession we must hold on to. But life is none of these. Life is play, life is music, life is the dance of energy appearing as forms, disappearing as forms, always in motion, always alive. So then, the question arises, if life is simply to be alive, if there is no grand puzzle to solve, what are we supposed to do with ourselves? And the answer is, anything. You see, the universe didn't bring you here with a task list pinned to your chest. There is no cosmic manager keeping score, no divine accountant measuring how productive you've been. Being alive is enough. The rest is play. If you want to paint, paint. If you want to sing, sing. If you want to sit quietly and watch the birds, sit quietly and watch the birds. None of it needs justification. But of course, we are trained from the beginning to believe otherwise. We are told that unless we are productive, unless we are useful, unless we can point to results, then our life is wasted. But that's a dreadful misunderstanding of the game. Does a flower bloom to prove something? Does a bird sing to justify its existence? No, they do these things because it is their nature. And so with us, you don't live to pass a test. You live because life is what's happening. Now, let's return to this question of death for a moment. Because many people, when they hear the secret of life is to be alive, feel uneasy. They say, but what about when I'm no longer alive? What about when it ends? And here is where another joke is revealed. You've never experienced non-existence. Never. Not before you were born, not now, not ever. And when the time comes for this body to return to the earth, what makes you so sure you will experience it as an absence? We imagine death as darkness, as nothingness. But notice even darkness is something. Even nothing is an idea. And if you have never known nothing, why should you assume it is waiting for you? The truth is, life and death are not opposites. They are like front and back, up and down, in and out. They imply each other. You cannot have one without the other. To be alive is already to be woven with death, just as the crest of a wave is woven with the trough. And once you see this, you stop clinging so tightly, because you realize the point is not to avoid endings. The point is to dance while the music is playing. You see, we take life far too seriously. We behave as though the whole affair were a military operation, with objectives and strategies and missions to be accomplished. But life is not a business. It is not a school exam. It is not a courtroom where you are being judged. Life is more like a piece of jazz. It has structure, yes, but within it, endless improvisation. The meaning of jazz is not at the end of the song, but in the playing. The joy is in the riff, the unexpected twist, the laughter of the musicians when someone plays a note that surprises the others. And so it is with life. The meaning is in the improvisation, the surprises, the sheer fact that it is happening at all. But you will miss this music if you are always listening for the finale. You will miss it if you are too busy proving yourself. You will miss it if you are staring at the clock, waiting for something more important to begin. The great insight, then, is not that life contains a hidden purpose. The great insight is that life is the purpose. To be alive is the miracle. Everything else is decoration. When you stop to notice this, everything becomes luminous. The ordinary shines. A cup of tea, steam curling in the light, becomes a sacred event. The sound of the wind through the trees becomes music. Even the act of breathing, which you've been doing your whole life without thought, becomes astonishing. And then you realize the secret of life was never locked away in monasteries or scriptures. It was always here, in the utterly obvious fact of existence. But our trouble is, we take the obvious for granted. We chase the exotic and ignore the simple. We look for God in the heavens while missing the miracle of our own heartbeat. And perhaps this is why sages have always spoken in paradox, in riddles, in laughter. Because when you point directly to the truth, people refuse to see it. But when you dress it up in a cosmic joke, suddenly it sneaks past the defenses of the mind. So, what do you do now? You live, you play, you laugh, you allow yourself to be astonished. You realize you are not a separate little creature trapped inside a bag of skin. You are the universe itself, pretending for a while to be this person with this name, this story, this body. And when this particular act of the play is over, the curtain doesn't fall on life itself. It only falls on this scene. The show goes on in endless forms, endless disguises, endless rhythms. You don't need to know what comes next. That's part of the fun. If you already knew the ending, it would spoil the game. The surprise is the point. And so, trust the dance, trust the music. Don't try to clutch it or control it. Let it carry you. Because the secret of life was never hidden. It was always here, waiting for you to notice. So, laugh at the absurdity, sing along with the melody, and remember, the secret is not in some distant future. The secret is this: to be alive now, fully, playfully, completely. Alive, always alive. Even in change, even in loss, even in the mystery. Because what you are is life itself, and life never ends. It's strange, isn't it? How the world convinces you that freedom has a price tag. That somewhere on the other side of financial success, there waits a version of you who finally breathes without fear. You picture it often, that effortless life, with no more bills to worry about, no debts to calculate, no need to chase anyone or anything. Yet when you finally taste a glimpse of that comfort, something unexpected happens. Instead of peace, you feel a quiet emptiness. You look at your bank account and realize that the numbers may have changed, but the restlessness within you hasn't. What most people call financial freedom is often just a more comfortable form of slavery. You become free from the old anxieties, only to replace them with new ones. Now the question isn't how do I survive, But how do I stay ahead? How do I protect what I've built? How do I make sure it doesn't all vanish? And so, even in abundance, you worry. Even in wealth, you tremble. Money, after all, is an abstraction, a symbol of value that we mistake for value itself. The illusion begins when you start believing that money is a source of freedom rather than a tool. In truth, it is simply a measure of human trust, a shared agreement, a token for the exchange of energy, skill, and time. But because we live in a world that worships measurement, we mistake the symbol for the substance. We try to buy freedom the same way we buy comfort, not realizing that true freedom can't be purchased. It can only be perceived. If you pay close attention to people who have made their fortune, you'll often notice the peculiar anxiety that follows them. It's not the same fear of scarcity they had before, but a subtler one, a fear of losing identity. For so long, they were defined by their pursuit. Their dreams were driven by struggle, by the next milestone. When the pursuit ends, they often don't know who they are without it, and so they keep running. They keep accumulating. They turn life into a game of endless increase, unaware that they've become prisoners to their own success. The human mind has an astonishing ability to normalize everything it touches. That's why people who once dreamed of earning a few $100s a week now can't sleep unless they're chasing thousands. We move the goalposts every time we reach them, not because we're greedy, but because the ego can't survive without pursuit. The ego lives in the distance between where you are and where you think you should be. So when money removes that distance, the ego quietly creates a new one. That's why you might have noticed, even after you reach a certain level of comfort, a quiet voice still says, "It's not enough." It's the same voice that once said, "When I get there, I'll finally be happy." But happiness doesn't wait at the end of the road. It exists only in the act of walking. The tragedy of modern ambition is that it teaches people to run faster toward a finish line that doesn't exist. Money itself isn't evil. It's neutral, like water or fire. It can nurture or destroy, depending on how it's held. But the human tendency to attach identity to money, that's where the suffering begins. Because once you believe your worth depends on your wealth, every fluctuation in your fortune feels like a fluctuation in your soul. When your net worth rises, you feel strong. When it falls, you feel small. And in that fragile dance between pride and panic, you lose sight of the truth. You were never meant to be measured in digits. Money is a form of play, a beautifully sophisticated game that humanity created for itself. The problem is that we've forgotten it's a game. We treat it as survival. We measure human success by the numbers printed on a screen, and we wonder why everyone feels so anxious. Because when play becomes pressure, joy turns into tension. You can see it everywhere. The man in a suit staring at his phone in a restaurant, unable to taste his meal. The woman scrolling through investment charts late at night, her eyes dim from the glow of her own ambition. The young person glued to videos about financial freedom, yet living in constant comparison with people who seem freer than them. We've turned freedom into another commodity to be marketed, sold, and envied. We think, if I can just make more, then I'll be free. But freedom that depends on a future condition isn't freedom. It's postponement. It's a subtle way of saying, I can't live now because I haven't earned it yet. And this is where the illusion deepens. Because when you finally get there, when the bills are paid and the debts are gone, you suddenly realize that you still don't know how to rest. You've trained your mind to chase, not to be still. And so, when there's nothing left to chase, you feel uneasy. You start new projects, new goals, new investments, anything to keep the machine running. You can buy time, but you can't buy presence. You can buy comfort, but not contentment. And yet, most people spend their entire lives trying to buy the things that can only be found in stillness. Wealth without awareness is a trap. When you forget to enjoy life, money simply becomes a more elaborate way to distract yourself from it. You can't really get something for nothing, because you can't really get anything at all. Life isn't about getting, it's about being. We misunderstand abundance. We think it means more possessions, more digits, more influence. But in truth, abundance is the ability to experience the present moment without resistance. It's the peace that arises when you no longer need anything to feel complete. Imagine you were born in a world where money didn't exist, only trade, cooperation, and trust. Would you still feel poor, or would you see that the true currency of life is time, attention, and love? Those three are the only forms of wealth that never lose value, never suffer inflation, and never decay when shared. Yet those are the very things we trade away for symbols. You might say, but money gives me freedom. And yes, it can give you choices, but choices are not freedom. Freedom is the ability to choose without fear. It is a state of mind, not a state of account. You can have billions and still feel trapped in comparison, or have very little and feel vast inside. The most powerful people in the world are not those who can buy anything they want, but those who need nothing to feel whole. That is why the mystics, monks, and philosophers across history have always seemed strangely serene, not because they rejected money, but because they saw through it. They understood that the desire for control is the root of all bondage, and money is one of the cleverest illusions of control that humanity ever invented. So much of modern life is built around the fear of loss. We insure everything, save everything, protect everything, as if immortality could be purchased in monthly payments. But what if true freedom lies not in what you secure, but in what you can release? We suffer from a peculiar form of madness. We spend our lives earning money to live, and then forget to live while earning it. Think of how many moments are lost to worry. How much joy is postponed because it didn't seem practical at the time. We tell ourselves that one day, when everything is in order, we'll finally relax. But that day never arrives, because life was never designed to be in order. It was designed to be experienced. To the person who has chased success all their life, the greatest challenge isn't earning more, it's learning how to stop. To sit quietly in the abundance they already have and realize that peace doesn't come from possession, but perception. The pursuit of wealth can be beautiful when it's creative, when it's done as an art, a dance with life, not a struggle against it. But when it becomes obsession, it distorts your entire relationship with existence. Because in your attempt to own the world, you forget that you're already part of it. You forget that every sunset, every breath, every heartbeat is wealth beyond measure. The truth is not to condemn money, but to reveal its limits. Do not seek yourself in what you earn, because if your identity depends on your success, then even when you win, you lose. You become like a man clutching water. The tighter you hold, the less you have. And so the paradox remains. The more you chase freedom through money, the more you bind yourself to it. The moment you believe you need it to be happy, you've already surrendered your freedom to it. But if you can see through the illusion, if you can learn to play with money instead of worshiping it, something miraculous happens. You begin to experience wealth as flow rather than possession. You begin to move through life with lightness rather than tension. You begin to realize that freedom isn't something to achieve, but something you've always had. And that realization, once seen, can never be unseen. There comes a point in every person's life when they must ask a frighteningly honest question. What am I really chasing? For years, you've called it security, success, stability. But beneath those words, there is something deeper, a longing not for money, but for meaning, for a feeling of safety that no number seems to provide, for a sense of being enough. And yet, the tragedy is that you already are. You cannot get to happiness. You can only be it. That is what so many forget. They keep trying to arrive at a place that was never elsewhere. Freedom is not a destination. It is a quality of awareness, a way of seeing life without being dominated by the need to control it. Money, in itself, is simply condensed energy. It amplifies who you already are. If you are anxious, it gives you more things to be anxious about. If you are free, it gives you more ways to express that freedom. That is why some people become miserable when they become wealthy. The noise inside them was never addressed, only magnified. But once you understand this, something begins to shift. You start to see that your relationship with money mirrors your relationship with life itself. The same way you grasp for control in your finances, you grasp for certainty in your future. The same way you hoard wealth out of fear, you hoard emotions out of insecurity. And when you let go of one, you begin to soften toward the other. The art of freedom is not about how much you have, but how lightly you can hold it. When you stop trying to possess everything, you realize you already belong to everything. That is the essence of effortless action. The understanding that wealth, like water, flows best when it is not forced. Think of a river. You can swim with it, or you can exhaust yourself fighting against it. The current does not care whether you resist. It keeps moving. And so, the wise person learns to float. They allow wealth to come and go like the tide, understanding that both movement and stillness are part of the same ocean. In our culture, we celebrate accumulation. We admire those who climb, collect, and conquer. But rarely do we honor those who release. Yet, release is where true power hides, because only the one who can let go fully is the one who is no longer afraid. There is a profound freedom in being able to say, if it comes, good. If it goes, good. Imagine if you could live like that, not careless, but deeply trusting. To live so completely in the present that you stop postponing peace for a tomorrow that never arrives. You see, money can only bring freedom to those who are already free inside. To everyone else, it becomes another chain, a golden one, perhaps, but still a chain. Because the moment you say, I will relax when I have enough, you have made your peace conditional on something external, something the world can always take away. The only real wealth is inner stillness. When you can sit in silence with nothing to prove, nothing to protect, and still feel whole, that is when you have arrived. And strangely enough, it is from that very stillness that abundance flows. Because when you stop chasing, you create space for things to find you. There is a principle of reversal in life. The harder you try to hold on, the faster things slip through your fingers. But when you relax your grip, when you allow, you begin to notice that life naturally supports you. Opportunities arise, people appear, synchronicities unfold, not because you forced them, but because you stop resisting them. Think of a tree. It does not strain to grow, yet it grows. It does not demand fruit, yet fruit appears. It simply exists in alignment with what it is, and in that alignment, abundance becomes inevitable. The same law applies to you. If you were to measure your wealth not in dollars, but in awareness, how rich would you be? How present are you to your own life? How deeply do you experience each moment before it slips away? Most people trade this awareness for the illusion of progress. They live in a constant state of not yet, always preparing to live, but never arriving. And yet, life keeps happening, not later, but now. That is the ultimate irony. We try to buy more time, forgetting that time is the only currency we can never increase. Every moment spent chasing becomes a moment unseen, unlived, unappreciated. But when you realize that this very moment, this breath, this heartbeat, is the only enough that ever existed, something inside you softens. You no longer fight the flow. You start to dance with it. The meaning of money is in its movement. It is not meant to be hoarded, but circulated. It is energy in motion. And when you let it move, it brings life. When you freeze it, it begins to die. The same is true for joy, for love, for creativity. These things only remain alive when shared. That is why generosity has always been the mark of a truly wealthy spirit. Because generosity is not about giving away money, it is about releasing attachment. It is saying, I trust life enough to let this go. And the universe, being an echo of that same trust, often responds in kind. Real wealth does not come from possessing more, but from needing less. You become infinitely rich the moment you stop trying to compensate for your sense of lack. You realize that all this time, you were never chasing money, you were chasing yourself. You were searching for the feeling of being enough. And the moment you recognize that you already are, the chase ends. This does not mean you abandon ambition or stop working. It simply means you stop confusing effort with worth. You work not to become something, but to express what you already are. That shift, subtle as it seems, transforms everything. Suddenly, your actions feel lighter. You stop competing and start creating. You stop worrying about outcomes because you understand that what truly matters was never at stake. The real purpose of money is play, to facilitate exchange, creativity, and connection, not to define identity. When you begin to treat it as play, you participate in the great rhythm of life without losing yourself in it. You can work hard, earn much, even enjoy luxury, but you no longer confuse the mask for the face. Look around the world and you will notice that the happiest people are not necessarily those who have the most, but those who are most alive. They use money like musicians use notes, as a means of expression, not measurement. They can laugh at losses, smile through uncertainty, and still trust the unfolding of things. You may not control every rise and fall of fortune, but you can always control your relationship to it. You can choose to see money as movement rather than meaning. You can choose to treat wealth as a guest rather than a god. The moment you stop believing that happiness lies somewhere beyond the next financial milestone, you begin to wake up. You realize that the true treasure of life is not stored in banks, but in awareness, in the ability to see beauty in what is already here. Imagine living from that space. You still earn, still plan, still invest, but you no longer suffer through it. You no longer chase freedom, you express it. Because the free person is not one who has escaped the system, but one who no longer believes it defines them. Wealth and freedom are not opposites. They only appear that way when you forget who you are. When you remember, everything becomes simple. You earn when you need to, you rest when you can, and you allow life to unfold in its rhythm. And then, quite mysteriously, abundance finds its way back to you. Not because you demanded it, but because you finally stopped blocking it. You stopped clutching at life and started trusting it. The fool chases freedom through control. The wise simply realize that control was never needed. And in that realization, you discover the most profound truth of all.
Isn't it curious? The more you give yourself away, the less you are truly seen. If the sun never set, we would cease to notice its light. If a bird sang without pause, its song would dissolve into noise. But the moment you step back, the moment you withdraw into silence, suddenly your presence takes on weight. People feel the shape of your absence, and in that very emptiness, you are valued again. This is one of life's delicious paradoxes. What is constant becomes invisible, what is scarce becomes precious. I don't mean trickery, nor the silly business of playing hard to get. That is just another mask. What I mean is the art of honoring your own presence, of moving with the same rhythm you find in the tides, in the waxing and waning of the moon. For even nature does not give itself all at once, nor all the time. Whatever is constant and without limit soon feels ordinary. Its gift lies not in burning without end, but in the rhythm of rising and falling, appearing and disappearing. If the sun never set, we would soon grow weary of its light and long for shadow. So it is with you. Your presence has power because it comes and goes like the tides that advance and recede, like love that breathes in closeness and in distance. Respect is born not from endless exposure, but from the spaces in between. Have you noticed how quickly generosity turns into expectation? The one who always says yes is soon taken for granted, while the one who withholds at times is cherished when they appear. It is not about virtue, but about balance. To step back is to remember your humanity. You are not a machine, but a rhythm, like the sea that ebbs and flows, like the moon that waxes and wanes. For life itself is not a straight line, but a dance of presence and absence. Isn't it strange? The moment you cease to be forever at hand, the relationship takes on new life. For when you are not always there, people no longer treat you as furniture in the room, but as a presence to be encountered. They lean closer. They listen. They treasure the passing moment. Even your silence, even your absence begins to speak. We only notice the sweetness of water when it grows scarce. When it gushes everywhere, it is wasted and ignored. But when it is drawn from a deep well, each sip is savored. So it is with your presence. If you flood the world with yourself, you wash away your value. But when you come and go like the tide, your presence refreshes like cool water in the desert. From childhood, we are taught to smile, to nod, to say yes, mistaking obedience for affection and availability for love. Yet love, like a garden, needs space to breathe. Too much rain drowns it, too much sun withers it. It flourishes in rhythm, not excess. Absence is not emptiness, but the interval that gives shape. Just as music is made not only of notes, but of the silence between them, so too love ripens in the dance of nearness and distance. Without the pauses, all dissolves into noise. Life is like a melody. And so if you never step back, never say no, you too become noise. Seen but not noticed, heard but not listened to. Value lies in the interval, the well-placed absence. This is not neglect, but rhythm. The tree does not bear fruit in every season. Fire does not burn forever. It must die down so it can be kindled again. Even breath itself depends on exhaling as well as inhaling. Why imagine you must give without rest? When you withdraw and return, your presence gathers weight, like the hush that makes the bells strike resound. And here is the paradox. By making yourself less available, you become more real. People meet your wholeness, not the fragments you scatter. Like the man who speaks rarely, it is not his words that are louder, but his silence that makes them precious. So it is with your presence. Given without pause, it is diluted. Held with rhythm, it gathers intensity. This is why stepping back is sometimes the most loving act of all. Look at love itself. Lovers who clutch too tightly smother the flame, while those who vanish altogether let the fire die. The art lies in rhythm, closeness and distance, voice and silence, embrace and release. Notice how the man who is seldom available is the one most carefully attended, not because his busyness is a virtue, but because his time carries weight. If he gives you a moment, it feels like a gift, for it has not been scattered like seed on barren ground. Contrast this with the one who is forever waiting, forever bending, whose presence is taken for granted precisely because it is always at hand. This is not a question of superiority, but of recognition. When you honor the worth of your own hours, others are compelled to honor them too. But if you spend them carelessly, the world will treat them as trifles. And so, to stop being always available is not cruelty, it is clarity. It is the quiet refusal to leap at every summons, to patch every quarrel that is not yours, to serve as the eternal remedy for other people's restlessness. It is to stand rooted in yourself, and from that stillness to act when the moment is right. For your life is not meant to be endlessly consumed, but to be lived, richly, deeply, sincerely. And only from such fullness can you give in a way that nourishes, rather than exhausts. Now here is something quite remarkable. When you cease to be endlessly available, you begin to hear your own life again. For in forever tending to others, you drown the small secret music within. Your days are filled with clamor, but your soul remains unheard. Step back and suddenly you catch the whispers, the quiet callings, the subtle joys, the long-buried desires that rise like forgotten seeds breaking through the soil. To be available to yourself is the beginning of authenticity, and without authenticity, love itself becomes counterfeit. Every yes that betrays your own being is in truth a silent no, and from such denials only resentment can grow. There was a man who spent himself in the service of others, giving until he was emptied. Yet for all his sacrifice, he remained unseen. At last, exhausted, he stepped back. And only then did the world protest. They called him selfish, cold, neglectful. But slowly, something curious began to happen. In his absence, they began to feel the weight he had long carried. For the first time, his presence was no longer taken for granted, but respected. In stepping back, he had not lost love at all. He had opened the door for love to appear, where once there had only been convenience. So you see, to become less available is not an act of rejection, but of invitation. It is the invitation for others to wake up to your presence, and for you to wake up to yourself. For only in the open space between two beings can respect take root and love draw breath. When you are forever at hand, no one stops to wonder who you are or what you truly give. But when you withdraw, when you refuse to play the endless part, suddenly they must pause. They must look. And in that moment of seeing, the whole pattern begins to shift. Why, then, is this so hard? Because we are frightened. We imagine that a single no will banish love. We fear that if we step aside, we shall be forgotten. We tremble that if we honor our own worth, others will not. But ask yourself, if someone values you only so long as you are endlessly at their disposal, is that love, or is it merely convenience? Much of our suffering, you see, is not caused by what others do to us, but by what we permit. Out of fear of displeasing, we stretch ourselves thin, we give beyond our means, we say yes when the heart cries no, and then we cloak this self-betrayal under the name of kindness. But it is no kindness to betray yourself. To give what you do not have is like offering an empty bowl. True kindness flows only from fullness, and fullness requires form. To cease being endlessly available is to honor that form. To say, I am human, I have rhythm, I have worth. And yes, some may drift away when you step back, but then you discover a deeper truth. They were not with you at all, but with the endless fountain they mistook you for. Better to be cherished for your reality than tolerated for your exhaustion. Better to lose those who drained you than to lose yourself altogether. And here again the paradox shows its face. Those who truly matter, those who truly love, will not vanish when you step back. They will bend with you, as trees bend with the wind. They will grow into the space you create, and in that very movement, the bond deepens. So when you cease to be forever at hand, you do not become less, you become more visible, more authentic, more real. You gather together the scattered fragments of yourself and return as a whole being, and life always bows to wholeness. For wholeness has its own gravity. It draws, it attracts, it commands respect without demanding it. The broken self clamors to be noticed, while the whole self is noticed without effort. You cease to be background noise and become the very music to which others listen. Picture yourself as a well. If all may draw without end, the waters will one day vanish, and both you and they will be left thirsty. But when the well is guarded, when it is given time to fill again from its hidden springs, then those who come to drink find refreshment. To withdraw at times, to cease being endlessly available, is simply to keep the waters of your life pure and flowing. This is not selfishness, but the very condition that makes giving possible. From a full well, the water is sweet. From a dry one, nothing can be drawn. Yet the world will not at first thank you for this. Those who were accustomed to your endless flow will call you selfish, accuse you of change, and indeed you have changed. You are no longer a tool to be used, but a being who gives from freedom. This unsettles those who lived upon your weakness, but it strengthens those who honor your strength. In time, the numbers may grow fewer, but the bonds grow deeper. For love that is real does not fear your boundary. It bows to it. So then we come to this curious question. Who are you when you're not forever on call, forever answering the ring of the world? Who are you when you sit still, when you stop chasing, when you listen to the hum inside your own skull? Most of us forget, you see, because we're so busy being useful to others that we've misplaced ourselves. But in the silence, in that delicious nothing, you suddenly stumble upon yourself again. And far from being empty, it's wonderfully full. To withdraw is not to desert life, but to return to it. For in stepping back, you discover that life is like breathing in and out. If you only breathe out, you collapse. If you only give, you dry up. The rhythm of the tide is the rhythm of being. You see? It's the old paradox. In not seeking, things come to you. In not clutching, they remain. And so, curiously, when you stop demanding respect, people respect you. When you cease to be always available, you become truly present. You don't have to insist on your worth, you are it. So, the game is not about being endlessly busy, endlessly agreeable. It's about rhythm, sincerity, wholeness. Say yes when it's a real yes. Say no when it's a real no. Step forward when you're full. Step back when it's time to fill. That isn't selfishness. That's simply the wisdom of the dance. And then, as if by magic, life begins to keep the beat with you.
There comes a time in every life when the idea of losing starts to feel familiar. You've done everything right, or at least tried to. You've followed the rules, set your intentions, given your best. And yet, the world doesn't seem to reward your persistence. You reach for things and they slip away. You open your heart and it gets bruised again. You try to grow, and still you find yourself circling the same lessons in different forms. It's in those moments that you begin to wonder, not in bitterness, but in quiet weariness, if any of it has meaning. What's strange, though, is that even in that weariness, something in you still shows up. You still wake up. You still breathe. You still try. It may not look like ambition anymore, but a quieter rhythm of being, not the roar of trying to win, but the whisper of simply continuing. That life is not a problem to be solved, but a dance to be enjoyed. But when you've been losing for a long time, it's difficult to remember the dance. You start to think that life is testing you, that the repeated setbacks mean something personal, that the universe is keeping score. You look around and see others moving ahead while you seem to remain in place. That comparison cuts deeper than defeat itself. But what if you were never meant to win in the way you imagined? What if the whole idea of losing was an illusion born from the mind's addiction to measurement? The river doesn't lose when it bends. The wave doesn't fail when it falls back into the ocean. It's all the same movement. Every time you think you've lost, it's only because you were measuring life by something that was never stable, results, recognition, outcomes. But life isn't stable. It's alive. It breathes, it collapses, it blooms again. The flower doesn't think of the winter as a loss. It simply rests until it can rise again. When you're tired of losing but still show up, something beautiful begins to happen. The trying becomes quieter. The motives soften. You no longer push out of desperation, but from a kind of sincerity, not because you believe success will save you, but because it feels true to participate. You realize that effort itself can be a kind of devotion, even if it doesn't yield victory. And maybe that's what grace really is, showing up without knowing why, trusting that the act itself is enough. You see, the mind divides life into winners and losers, but life itself knows nothing of such divisions. It only moves, it expands, it contracts, it explores. What you call failure is just the other half of creation, the part that teaches humility, patience, surrender. Without it, there would be no wisdom, only vanity. When you've lost enough times, the ego begins to crack, and through those cracks, light starts to enter. You begin to see that the purpose of the loss was not to punish you, but to soften you, to make you less certain that you were ever in control. And in that softening, you start to discover a deeper kind of strength, not the will to dominate circumstances, but the capacity to remain open within them. Imagine standing in the rain. You can curse the weather, fight to stay dry, or you can simply let yourself get wet. At first it's uncomfortable, but soon something shifts, the fight leaves you, and what's left is sensation, coolness, texture, aliveness. You realize the rain isn't against you. It's just happening, and so are you. That's what happens when you stop treating loss as an enemy. You start to live again. You start to see that showing up, even soaked and tired, is its own kind of victory. You may not realize it, but every time you get back up, you're demonstrating something sacred, that consciousness is resilient. That awareness cannot truly be defeated. Even when everything falls apart, the part of you that watches it fall remains untouched. That witnessing presence, that's who you really are. The rest is just the story of a character learning how to love impermanence. When you begin to see from that stillness, losing takes on a different flavor. It's no longer humiliation, it's revelation. It shows you where you were attached, where you mistook temporary forms for truth. Each loss removes a mask. Each setback peels away another layer of illusion. And eventually, what's left is not a winner or a loser, but a being at peace with the game itself. You begin to understand that the act of showing up, even tired, even uncertain, is what life has been trying to teach you all along. To show up not as a conqueror, but as a participant. To move not for gain, but because movement is your nature. When you show up like that, even losing feels sacred, because you see that nothing was ever truly lost. It only changed shape. The effort transformed into learning, the failure into compassion, the exhaustion into stillness. If there is one secret the universe whispers to those who keep showing up, it's this: you are not being tested, you are being tempered. Life isn't interested in breaking you, it's teaching you to bend. And so, every time you think you can't take another loss, another setback, another disappointment, notice that somehow you still do. You're still breathing. You're still here. That is not weakness, that's grace. You've mistaken it for endurance, but it's something far more subtle. It's the quiet understanding that your worth was never tied to winning. That life's invitation was never to succeed, but to participate in its unfolding with open eyes and an undefended heart. When you understand that, losing stops feeling like the end of something. It becomes a pause, a reorientation, the silence between notes in the music of becoming. And in that silence, you might find something you've been missing, not success, but peace. There's a rhythm you start to notice after losing enough times. It's not loud. It's almost hidden beneath the noise of disappointment. At first, all you hear is the echo of your own frustration, that voice inside that says, I can't keep doing this. But if you listen long enough, the echo fades and you begin to hear something quieter, a pulse, a kind of still music beneath the struggle. That pulse is life continuing through you, no matter what. It's what keeps you standing up when every part of you wants to stop. It doesn't care about results. It doesn't even care about hope. It just moves. It's the same energy that brings the tide back after the retreat, that pushes the seed to crack open even in barren soil. You don't control it. You are it. When you begin to sense that, losing no longer feels final. You start to see that every so-called failure has been shaping you into something softer, wiser, more real. You realize that it's not your strength that kept you going, but life itself expressing through you. The truth is, you never chose to keep showing up. You were chosen by something deeper than will, the part of you that knows that even heartbreak is worth feeling if it means being alive. There's a certain beauty in that surrender. It's not dramatic. It doesn't shout or seek recognition. It's the quiet dignity of still showing up to life, even when no one is watching, when there's nothing to win, nothing to prove. You start to understand that perhaps showing up is all life ever asked for. The sun doesn't rise to win the sky. The waves don't move to impress the shore. They show up because that's their nature. And maybe that's your nature too, to move, to try, to feel, to fall, and to rise again. When you're tired of losing, the temptation is to stop caring, to withdraw your tenderness. But that's how the heart hardens. What life invites instead is a different kind of caring, not the effortful caring that drains you, but the open caring that flows without expectation. There is a form of strength that only comes when you stop defending against pain, the kind that no longer needs to be right or successful or admired. It's the strength that lives in vulnerability, the strength that says, even if I fall again, I will not close. That's what the universe recognizes, not your victories, but your willingness to stay open. Because openness, no matter how tired, is a kind of prayer. If you've been losing, it doesn't mean you're doing life wrong. It might mean you're finally doing it honestly. When pretense falls away, so does certainty, and what remains is the raw, unfiltered experience of being human. It's messy, it's painful, but it's real. And in that realness, you find something that winning could never give you: intimacy with existence itself. The people who seem to have everything often live on the surface of life. Those who have lost, who have been stripped bare, are the ones who touch its depth. They know how fragile joy is, how precious ordinary moments are. They've been to the bottom, and they know there's no treasure there except understanding. When you stop running from that understanding, a new kind of peace begins to bloom. It's not the peace of control or success, but the peace of being at home in your own imperfection. You start to smile at your mistakes. You begin to see the humor in your old seriousness. You realize that life was never mocking you, it was teaching you to laugh. You remember how children play. They lose constantly, and it never matters. They fall, they cry, they get up, and the game goes on. Somewhere along the line, you forgot that the game was meant to be played that way. The spiritual path, in truth, is a return to that innocence. It's not about transcending failure. It's about rediscovering the joy of participating. So when you wake up tomorrow and feel that familiar heaviness, that whisper that says, I can't keep doing this, remember that you don't need to do it in the same way. You can show up differently, softer, slower, without the armor. Show up not as a fighter, but as a witness. Show up not to conquer the day, but to meet it. There's no need to fix everything today or ever. The ocean doesn't fix the shore. It just arrives again and again until the rocks themselves soften. That's how life shapes you, through the persistence of presence. You'll find that once you stop demanding results, something inside you starts to rest. The exhaustion that once felt endless begins to lighten. You realize that you don't need to win anymore. You just need to be here. And strangely enough, that's when life starts moving in your favor, not because you forced it, but because you stopped resisting it. When you stop trying to make everything happen, you create space for things to unfold. What once felt like loss begins to look like redirection. What once felt like stagnation begins to look like stillness. You discover that every time you showed up through your fatigue, you weren't proving your worth, you were remembering it. The part of you that still rises, still participates, still believes in beauty, even when everything hurts, that part is untouched by defeat. It doesn't need recognition. It doesn't need reward. It simply is. That's the real victory. And one day, when you look back, you'll see that what you called losing was actually the slow removal of everything false. What remained, what kept showing up, was the truest part of you. So yes, you may be tired of losing, but you have not been losing. You've been learning how to live without needing to win. And that, quietly, is how you begin to win without trying. There's something extraordinary that begins to happen when you finally stop fighting the story of your life. You still wake up each morning. You still face the same uncertainties, but the air around everything feels different. It's as though the tension in the invisible threads that held you to an idea of success has loosened. You still show up, but now there's a softness in the gesture. You begin to understand that showing up was never about proving your strength. It was about remembering your belonging. You see, most people misunderstand perseverance. They think it means clinging, forcing, pushing through until something changes. But true perseverance is quieter than that. It's not the will to keep moving for the sake of progress. It's the willingness to stay present even when nothing makes sense. It's staying in the room with life itself, even when every instinct says to run. When you've lost enough, something begins to purify in you. Your ambitions, once sharp and demanding, start to melt into something gentler. You no longer need to chase validation. You no longer need to prove that your path is correct. You begin to notice that even your failures have been faithful companions. Each one came to reveal another layer of illusion, another place where you were confusing effort with essence. There's a curious grace in those moments when you realize that you can't keep controlling outcomes. The kind of surrender arises, not because you've given up, but because you've seen through the futility of grasping. When you let go of control, you begin to see that life never needed it. The river knows where to turn, the wind knows where to blow, the tree knows when to let its leaves fall. You don't need to direct it. You only need to participate in its rhythm. That participation is what it means to show up. It doesn't require enthusiasm or certainty. It only asks for presence. There are days when your showing up will look like joy and creativity, and there are days when it will look like simply breathing. Both are equal in the eyes of life. The human mind loves to measure, to rank, to name one thing better than another. But in the vastness of being, all expressions have their place. The sunlight and the rain both belong. The laughter and the silence are both sacred. You begin to realize that there is no such thing as wasted effort, because every movement teaches you something about the nature of flow. When you stop seeing life as a contest, your heart begins to open again. It's as though an old wound starts to breathe. You realize that most of your exhaustion was not from doing, but from trying to make everything mean something. You were asking each moment to justify its existence, and in doing so, you missed the beauty of simply being here. There's an old saying that enlightenment is not about becoming divine, but about becoming fully human. To feel deeply, to fall, to rise, to care, to let go, that's the real dance. When you participate in life without demanding victory, you start to sense a quiet joy emerging from the simplest acts. Making a meal, holding a hand, watching light move through leaves. There's no grandeur in these moments, and yet they carry a tenderness that nothing else can match. That tenderness is the beginning of peace. It comes when you no longer divide the world into what should be and what is. You see, all suffering begins with resistance to what is. You believe that things should have gone differently, that you should have been further along, that life should have been kinder. But the moment you stop arguing with reality, something miraculous happens. The pain doesn't disappear, but it softens. It becomes a companion instead of an enemy. And from that softness, wisdom begins to grow, not the kind that comes from knowledge or experience, but the wisdom that comes from allowing. It's the kind of knowing that whispers, "This too belongs." You start to see how even your losses were forms of guidance. Each door that closed was protecting you from walking where you weren't meant to go. Each disappointment was redirecting you towards something your mind couldn't yet imagine. Every person who left was teaching you the difference between attachment and love. Love, in its truest form, is not possession or certainty. It's participation without guarantee. To love is to show up even when you might lose, even when there's no promise of return. And that's what makes it sacred. You realize that life itself is a love affair, wild, unpredictable, sometimes devastating, but always alive. And to keep showing up for it, even when it breaks your heart, is to honor its mystery. There's a passage in the Tao Te Ching that says, "Do your work, then step back, the only path to serenity." For years, that sounded to me like resignation. But what it really means is that serenity doesn't come from withdrawal, it comes from trust. When you step back, you make room for life to breathe through you instead of around you. You stop trying to pull meaning from the world and start allowing meaning to reveal itself. That's why so many of your greatest moments come after surrender. You reach the edge of your own endurance, and in that collapse, something else takes over. The effort stops, and in its place arrives grace. You realize that the power you were seeking to cultivate was never yours to begin with. It was always the universe moving through you. You don't need to generate it. You only need to stop blocking it. When you act from that understanding, life becomes lighter. You still work, you still strive, but the strain is gone. You move as a musician plays, not because you have to, but because it feels natural. Even when the melody changes, you keep playing, because that's what the song demands. That is the grace of showing up. It's not about heroism, it's about harmony. To show up with grace is to no longer treat life as something to conquer, but as something to accompany. You stop demanding perfection from yourself or others. You stop trying to manipulate timing. You learn to bow to the seasons of becoming. There will be days when you fall apart again. That's part of it. You'll wake up feeling heavy, lost, uncertain. But now you'll know that even this is sacred. You'll see that you can be tired and still present, confused and still kind. That's what it means to live awake. Life never promised you clarity. It only promised you experience. And the willingness to experience it fully, without turning away, is what makes you whole. So, if you are tired of losing, but still find yourself showing up, remember this: you are already succeeding in the only way that matters. You are participating in the mystery with your heart open. You are letting life live through you. You may not see it, but every breath you take in that awareness ripples outward. Somewhere, someone else feels less alone because you kept showing up. Somewhere, the world softens because you chose to stay. And maybe that's what winning really is, not triumph over life, but union with it. You'll still fall, you'll still lose, you'll still forget. But you'll also remember, again and again, that it was never about being invincible. It was about being present. When the next moment of defeat comes, meet it gently. Don't analyze it. Don't rush to overcome it. Just breathe and say, "Ah, this too. Then step into the next moment, and the next, and the next. You'll find that showing up isn't something you do, it's what you are. Even when you're tired, even when you think you've lost, life continues through you. And that continuation, that quiet persistence, is the heartbeat of existence itself. You don't need to know where it's leading. You just need to walk with it. And somewhere along the way, you'll look around and realize you were never losing. You were only being shaped. You were only being loved in a way that demanded you let go of every illusion of control. You were never meant to win against life. You were meant to dance with it. And even now, as you stand there, tired but present, you are already dancing.